Welcome back to the channel, where tonight we delve into a legend that has haunted imaginations for centuries, the story of the werewolf. Across the forests and villages of Europe, whispers of humans who could transform into wolves have persisted through the ages. These tales were not just stories for entertainment. They carried warnings, morals, and fears deeply rooted in the societies that told them. In many cultures, werewolves were said to be the result of a curse, a punishment for those who broke sacred laws or acted immorally. To some, the transformation was a divine retribution. To others, it was a mysterious force of nature that no human could control. In medieval Europe, tales of people turning into wolves appeared in chronicles, folklore collections, and even court records. These stories often describe villagers disappearing at night, only to return with the wildness of the forest in their eyes. The idea that a human could shift into a predator captured the imagination and also served as a way to explain otherwise mysterious or violent behaviors. Communities used these stories as cautionary tales, reminding people of the thin line between civilization and the untamed wilderness surrounding their homes. Interestingly, these early legends were not confined to one region. Across Germany, France, and Scandinavia, similar narratives appeared, each with its own local twist. Some spoke of enchanted forests, where humans lost themselves to the wolf spirit. Others told of family curses passed down through generations, binding certain individuals to an uncontrollable fate. What connects these stories is the deep human fascination with transformation and the duality of nature, the civilized self versus the wild, instinct-driven self that lurks beneath. As we explore tonight's story, we will consider not only the legends themselves, but also the questions they raise. Were these tales purely imaginative, or were they inspired by rare medical conditions, genetic anomalies, or psychological phenomena? How did fear and superstition shape these narratives, and why do they continue to grip our attention even today? By tracing the origins of the werewolf myth, we can uncover more than just a story of shapeshifters. We glimpse the fears, hopes, and cultural imagination of centuries past. Moving deeper into the legend, one of the most enduring elements of the werewolf myth is its connection to the moon, especially the full moon. From ancient times, storytellers noticed a pattern, strange events, unusual behavior, and, in particular, the alleged transformations of humans into wolves were often linked to the lunar cycle. The full moon, glowing high in the night sky, became a symbol of mystery, power, and sometimes uncontrollable change. People believed that when the moon reached its peak, the curse or the hidden beast within a person would awaken. This connection between the moon and transformation is not only poetic, but also psychologically compelling. The night itself has always been associated with fear, uncertainty, and the unknown. Adding the bright, unyielding light of a full moon amplified these feelings, creating an almost theatrical backdrop for stories of human to wolf metamorphosis. Folklore often describes villagers hearing howls echoing through the forest, seeing shadows that move with unnatural speed, or finding evidence of violent attacks that could not be explained by ordinary means. These occurrences were framed in the context of the moon, giving them a rhythm and predictability that reinforced belief in supernatural influence. Interestingly, The lunar link appears across multiple cultures, not just in Europe. In some Native American and Asian myths, similar stories tie human or spirit transformations to the cycles of the moon. This universal fascination suggests that the moon itself, with its changing phases and mysterious presence in the night sky, has long captured human imagination as a force capable of influencing behavior and destiny. Modern interpretations often revisit the lunar connection with a scientific lens. Researchers have studied sleep patterns, mood changes, and even crime statistics in relation to the full moon. While results are mixed, it is clear that the moon's symbolic power remains strong in storytelling. The idea of a person becoming something wild and uncontrollable when the moon is full resonates deeply because it reflects a universal tension, the balance between rational control and untamed instinct, the known self versus the hidden, primal nature. As we continue tonight, we will explore not just the moonlit transformations in legend, but also the real-world phenomena, medical, genetic, and psychological, that may have inspired these enduring myths. By understanding the lunar connection, we glimpse the way humans have historically sought to explain the inexplicable, turning the rhythms of the sky into stories that continue to fascinate and terrify. As we journey further into the world of werewolf legends, it becomes clear that no single culture holds a monopoly on the myth. Across Europe, Asia, and the Americas, stories of humans transforming into wolves or other animal forms take on unique shapes and meanings, reflecting local fears, beliefs, and environments. In Germany and France, for example, werewolves were often portrayed as cursed humans, punished for crimes or moral failings. These figures were deeply human, yet terrifying, blurring the line between man and beast. In Scandinavia, the myths took on a more spiritual dimension. Some tales describe shape-shifting not as a punishment, but as a skill or gift, where individuals could assume the form of wolves or bears to gain strength, wisdom, or protection. Here, the wolf was not purely a monster, but a symbol of the wild, a link between humans and the untamed forces of nature. Similarly, in Slavic folklore, the werewolf often served as a cautionary figure, embodying the consequences of breaking taboos or disrupting social norms, while also carrying elements of magical power. Beyond Europe, indigenous cultures around the world developed their own versions of shapeshifters. In Native American traditions, some tribes spoke of spirit beings or humans who could transform into animals, including wolves, as part of sacred rituals or visions. These stories were less about fear and more about connection to the land, to animals, and to the spiritual world. In Asia, certain myths feature humans turning into animals as a test of character or as a reflection of inner conflict, emphasizing moral lessons rather than curses. What emerges from these cultural variations is a fascinating pattern. While the details differ, wolves, tigers, foxes, or mythical hybrids, the core theme remains the same. These myths explore the tension between the civilized self and primal instincts, between the human mind and forces beyond understanding. They are not merely fanciful stories. They serve as mirrors of societal values, fears, and psychological truths. By examining how different cultures imagine the werewolf, we gain insight not only into the human imagination, but also into universal questions about identity, morality, and the boundary between human and animal. Tonight's exploration reminds us that while the legends may change with geography, the fascination with transformation and the unknown is a thread that connects humanity across time and space. Shifting from myth to medicine, some of the legends surrounding werewolves may have roots in real, observable conditions. One of the most commonly cited explanations is hypertrichosis, a rare genetic disorder that causes excessive hair growth all over the body. People with this condition can exhibit dense, sometimes coarse hair on the face, arms, and back, giving them an appearance that could easily spark fear or fascination in societies unfamiliar with such anomalies. In eras before modern science, a person with hypertrichosis could easily be labelled a wolf person, especially if other unusual traits or behaviours were present. Beyond physical traits, certain skin and facial deformities may have added to the mystique. Birthmarks, scars, or dental irregularities might have been interpreted as signs of a curse or transformation. In small, tight-knit communities, where superstition was woven into daily life, even minor differences could be magnified into evidence of the supernatural. These medical realities provide a tangible explanation for sightings or reports of werewolves long before the advent of modern medicine. Another fascinating angle lies in the interplay between genetics and environment. Certain inherited conditions could be triggered or worsened by diet, climate, or stress, leading to more pronounced features that inspired folklore. For example, nutritional deficiencies or hormonal imbalances might exaggerate traits associated with animalistic appearances. Combined with the imagination of observers, these biological factors could easily seed enduring myths that persist for centuries. Medical explanations also extend to behavior. Some individuals may have exhibited aggressive or unpredictable tendencies due to neurological or psychological conditions, which could be interpreted as wolf-like in the eyes of their neighbours. Clinical lycanthropy, a rare psychiatric syndrome where a person genuinely believes they can transform into an animal, is one modern example of how mind and body intersect to recreate aspects of the legend. By examining these medical explanations, we begin to see that the werewolf myth is not purely a product of superstition. Instead, it is a complex blend of observation, fear, and imagination. Physical anomalies, misunderstood conditions, and unusual behaviours could all contribute to stories that, over time, evolved into the rich and terrifying legends we know today. Understanding the medical perspective allows us to appreciate both the humanity behind the myth and the ingenuity of folklore in explaining the unknown. Beyond observable medical conditions, genetics may also hold clues to the origins of werewolf legends. Rare mutations can influence not only physical appearance, but also patterns of growth, hormone production, and even behavior. For instance, families with inherited forms of hypertrichosis could produce multiple individuals with unusually dense body hair, reinforcing the perception that a curse runs through a bloodline. Over generations, these traits might be exaggerated in storytelling, evolving into the idea of a hereditary werewolf. Genetics can also play a role in more subtle ways. Variations in genes affecting the nervous system or hormonal balance may contribute to heightened aggression, impulsivity, or other behaviors that, in a pre-scientific society, could be interpreted as animalistic. In small communities, where unusual traits are rare and highly visible, even a single family exhibiting these characteristics could spark legends that endure for centuries. Interestingly, the study of genetics offers a modern lens for understanding why certain myths seem so persistent. Folklore often reflects patterns noticed in real life, even if the explanation was misunderstood. A line of descendants showing unusual traits could easily be linked to a supernatural story, especially in times when science had not yet offered rational explanations. The idea of a genetic curse or inherited wolf-like trait may simply be an early, intuitive recognition of inheritance, a blend of observation and imagination. Some researchers also explore the possibility that myths like the werewolf legend served as a cultural mechanism for explaining genetic diversity or unusual phenotypes before modern biology existed. In this sense, storytelling functioned as an early form of science, attempting to make sense of rare but visible traits that could otherwise seem frightening or inexplicable. By connecting genetics to folklore, we see that the werewolf myth is more than entertainment. It is a reflection of human attempts to understand inheritance, variation, and the boundaries of the human body. These stories capture the tension between what is seen and what is understood, between biology and imagination, and ultimately remind us how the mysteries of human nature can give rise to legends that last far longer than any single lifetime. Moving from the body to the mind, psychology offers another lens through which to understand the werewolf legend. One of the most striking phenomena is clinical lycanthropy, a rare psychiatric syndrome in which an individual genuinely believes they can transform into an animal, often a wolf. Those affected may adopt behaviors, postures, or vocalizations associated with the animal, and in some cases, this belief can dominate their daily life. Although extremely uncommon, these cases provide a fascinating insight into how deeply the human mind can intertwine with myth. Psychological explanations extend beyond clinical disorders. Folklore often reflects societal fears projected onto individuals who behave differently. Aggression, antisocial tendencies, or sudden episodes of violence in a person could be interpreted as evidence of wolfish transformation. In pre-modern communities, without the framework of modern psychiatry, these behaviors were often attributed to curses, possession, or supernatural influence. Over time, repeated stories could crystallize into the legends we know today. Fear, imagination, and suggestion also play powerful roles. Humans are highly susceptible to cultural narratives, and belief can shape perception. Hearing tales of werewolves prowling under the full moon may have caused people to interpret normal nighttime sounds, shadows, or fleeting glimpses of wildlife as proof of transformation. Mass hysteria and social contagion could amplify these experiences, creating a feedback loop where stories reinforce fear and fear reinforces stories. The psychological perspective also highlights an essential theme in the werewolf myth, the duality of human nature. The idea that an ordinary person harbors a hidden, predatory side resonates deeply because it mirrors our understanding of impulse, aggression, and morality. Legends of transformation serve as a metaphor for inner conflict, illustrating the struggle between civilized restraint and instinctual drives. By examining the psychological dimensions, we gain a richer understanding of why werewolf myths endure. They are not merely tales of horror, but reflections of the mind's complexity, the power of belief, and the ways humans attempt to make sense of behavior that defies easy explanation. Through the lens of psychology, the line between myth and reality becomes intriguingly blurred, showing how the human psyche can transform imagination into perceived truth. Another important layer of the werewolf legend lies in behavioral influence, where culture, belief, and expectation shape human actions. People are not only storytellers, but also participants in the myths they inherit. When a community strongly believes that someone is cursed or capable of transformation, social pressure and psychological suggestion can profoundly affect that individual's behavior. They may unconsciously adopt traits or actions expected of a werewolf, reinforcing the myth in the eyes of others. Throughout history, documented cases of alleged werewolves often involved individuals accused of strange or violent behavior. In many instances, these people were marginalized or misunderstood outsiders, those with unusual physical traits, or those exhibiting behaviors that deviated from societal norms. The cultural narrative provided an explanation for what otherwise seemed inexplicable, and the accused sometimes internalized these roles, consciously or unconsciously performing in accordance with the expectations imposed upon them. Even today, the concept of behavioral influence resonates in psychology. Phenomena like mass hysteria or social contagion show how beliefs can spread through a group, altering perception and action. Hearing repeated stories of werewolves prowling at night could lead communities to interpret ordinary events, shadows, howls, or missing livestock as evidence of the supernatural. In turn, these observations fuel further storytelling, creating a cycle where legend and lived experience feed one another. Behavioral influence also connects to the broader theme of human identity. Werewolf myths explore the tension between individual agency and external expectation, between rational control and instinctive behavior. They highlight how humans can be both creators and subjects of their own stories, shaping reality as much as they are shaped by it. These narratives reveal a collective fascination with the duality of human nature and the thin line separating civilization from primal instincts. By considering behavioral influence, we see the werewolf legend as more than a simple story. It becomes a reflection of social dynamics, perception, and the ways belief can mold behavior. The myth survives not just because of fear or imagination, but because humans themselves participate in its creation, perpetuating the cycle across generations. Understanding this interplay between culture and behavior offers a deeper insight into why the werewolf continues to haunt our imagination centuries after its first appearances in folklore. Looking back through history, we find that the werewolf myth was more than a story. It was also a social reality, often enshrined in court records and legal proceedings. During the 15th to 17th centuries in Europe, werewolf trials became an unsettling phenomenon, particularly in Germany, France, and Switzerland. Accused individuals, usually those already marginalized in their communities, faced charges of murder, livestock attacks, or pacts with the devil framed within the context of lycanthropy. These trials reflect both the fear of the unknown and the legal system's attempt to impose order on inexplicable events. In many cases, confessions were extracted under torture, and the accused were often condemned based on testimony, rumor, or superstition rather than concrete evidence. What is striking is how intertwined these trials were with prevailing beliefs about witchcraft and the supernatural. A single accusation could escalate quickly, fueled by hysteria, religious zeal, and local legends. Historians note that these trials were as much about reinforcing social norms and power structures as they were about punishing supposed supernatural acts. Historical accounts also describe communities observing strange behavior, mysterious deaths, or livestock mutilations which were attributed to werewolves. People genuinely believed in the possibility of human transformation, and this belief shaped law, morality, and everyday life. It also provides a lens into how fear, storytelling, and observation combined to create enduring myths. Even after the formal decline of werewolf trials, the narratives persisted in folklore, literature, and oral tradition. Examining these historical cases reveals a pattern: extraordinary behavior, unexplained events, or unusual physical traits often became intertwined with the supernatural. The legend of the werewolf served as a framework for communities to make sense of violence, death, and human behavior that defied understanding. Moreover, it highlights how cultural fears can manifest in tangible consequences, from legal persecution to social ostracism. By understanding these historical cases, we see the werewolf myth not just as fiction, but as a mirror of societal fears, judicial practices, and human psychology. The stories, accusations, and trials all contribute to the rich tapestry of the legend, grounding centuries of imagination in the realities of human history. They remind us that myths are rarely created in isolation. They are shaped by the fears, beliefs, and actions of those who live them. Beyond the literal and historical, werewolves carry a rich layer of symbolism that continues to captivate our imagination. At their core, these legends reflect the duality of human nature, the constant tension between our civilized selves and the primal instincts that lie beneath the surface. The werewolf embodies this struggle, serving as a metaphor for suppressed desires, aggression, and the unpredictable aspects of the human psyche that society seeks to control. In literature and folklore, the transformation into a wolf often occurs under extreme circumstances: a full moon, emotional turmoil, or the influence of a curse. Symbolically, this suggests that every person harbors hidden potential for change, both creative and destructive. The wolf itself has long been a powerful figure in human culture, representing cunning, strength, and danger. By merging human and wolf, the myth dramatizes the internal conflict between reason and instinct, morality and impulse. Symbolism also extends to social and moral commentary. In some traditions, werewolves were seen as warnings against moral transgression, violence, or betrayal. They were the embodiment of the consequences when individuals give in to darker impulses. In this sense, The werewolf serves as a cautionary tale, illustrating the cost of surrendering to what is taboo or forbidden. Moreover, the imagery of the werewolf resonates across art, literature, and psychology because it speaks to universal fears and fascinations. It is a story of transformation, control, and loss of self, themes that are inherently human. Writers, filmmakers, and artists continue to explore this symbolism, often using the werewolf as a lens to examine identity, morality, and the tension between society and the self. By understanding the symbolic dimensions, we appreciate that the werewolf myth is not merely a tale of horror. It is a mirror reflecting human desires, anxieties, and the perpetual negotiation between our civilized exterior and the untamed forces within. These stories endure because they speak to something fundamental, the recognition that beneath every familiar face lies a complexity that can be both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Finally, the legend of the werewolf continues to evolve in modern interpretations, blending folklore, psychology, and science into contemporary storytelling. Today, werewolves are no longer confined to the dark forests of medieval Europe. They roam literature, cinema, and television, capturing the imagination of audiences worldwide. These modern versions often explore the themes of identity, transformation, and inner conflict, reflecting contemporary concerns while preserving the myth's core essence. In film and literature, werewolves are frequently portrayed as complex characters rather than mere monsters. They struggle with dual identities, balancing their human rationality with uncontrollable animal instincts. This narrative shift mirrors our growing understanding of psychology and human behavior, turning the legend into a lens through which to explore moral dilemmas, emotional tension, and personal transformation. The werewolf becomes a metaphor for adolescence, anger, or suppressed desire, making the myth relatable to modern audiences. Scientific curiosity also plays a role in contemporary interpretations. Genetic studies, rare medical conditions, and psychological phenomena are sometimes woven into storytelling, giving a semi-realistic explanation for the legendary transformation. This blend of fact and fiction allows the myth to persist in a way that resonates with today's viewers, who are fascinated by the intersection of biology, psychology, and culture. Moreover, modern pop culture has expanded the werewolf myth beyond traditional European roots. Stories now appear across global media, integrating elements from diverse cultures, folklore, and even futuristic or supernatural settings. This cross-cultural adaptation highlights the universal appeal of the werewolf, a creature that embodies both fear and fascination, reflecting humanity's ongoing curiosity about transformation, the unknown, and the limits of human nature. Ultimately, modern interpretations show that the werewolf myth is not stagnant. It continues to evolve, reflecting changes in science, psychology, and society, while preserving its symbolic power. The fascination endures because the core themes, duality, transformation, and the tension between instinct and reason remain deeply human. By exploring these modern versions, we see how an ancient legend can adapt to new times, reminding us that myths are living stories, shaped by imagination, knowledge, and the endless complexity of the human experience. As we reach the end of tonight's journey into the legend of the werewolf, it becomes clear that this myth is far more than a tale of horror. From ancient folklore and lunar mysteries to medical explanations, genetic factors, psychological phenomena, and historical trials, the story of the werewolf reflects humanity's ongoing struggle to understand itself. These legends capture the tension between our civilized nature and our primal instincts, the known and the unknown, fear and fascination. Through centuries and across cultures, the werewolf has remained a powerful symbol of transformation, duality, and the hidden forces within us all. Modern interpretations continue to explore these themes, reminding us that myths are not static. They evolve, adapt, and persist because they speak to universal human experiences. Whether as cautionary tales, metaphors for inner conflict, or stories of imagination brought to life, the werewolf endures as a reflection of who we are, what we fear, and what we aspire to understand. Thank you for joining me tonight to explore this enduring legend. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the mystery of the werewolf, do not forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts or any legends from your own culture that fascinated you. Until next time, keep your curiosity alive and remember that every myth, no matter how old, holds a piece of truth about the human experience.